Hello, this is Tommy Franks. Welcome to the 4-Star Leadership Podcast, product of the General Tommy Franks Leadership Institute and Museum. We're here to get a view into the lives of the legacy makers, the movers and the shakers of today. Offer insights from the full spectrum of the leadership community. We'll talk to former 4-star students and explore their leadership development path. We'll work to find out what they are about today and learn from the opportunities they've made for themselves in this world. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this podcast. Remember, leaders are not born, they're developed.
Hello, and welcome to episode 40 of the Core Principles of Leadership with General Tommy Franks podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jill Green, and today our guest is Chief Warrant Officer Nick Lavery. Chief Warrant Officer Lavery was born and raised in Massachusetts. After graduating college with a degree in criminal justice, Lavery enlisted in the United States Army in 2007 as a Special Forces recruit. After completing over 2 years of intense training, Lavery became an Army Green Beret. During his second deployment in Afghanistan, he was injured on 3 separate occasions. First, he took some shrapnel to the back of his shoulder during a village clearance operation. It was suggested he be medevac out of country. He declined and continued. A couple of months later, he was shot in the face while extracting his detachment commander from a burning truck following an IED ambush. He once again declined the suggested medevac. With around 3 weeks left in his deployment, he was shot 5 times during an insider attack, 4 times in the right leg and once in the lower left leg. The medevac helicopter couldn't land during this ongoing ambush, so he was forced to wait for over an hour with a shattered femur and a severed femoral artery. These are the words of Lavery in his book as he described the incident that should have killed him, but instead resulted in the amputation of his right leg above the knee. For his actions in Special Forces in 2019, he was awarded the Peter Ortiz Award by the Office of Strategic Services Society. Peter Ortiz was the most decorated member of the Office of Strategic Services. I will now read the words of Lieutenant General Francis M. Beret from the awards ceremony, who at the time was the commander of the United States Army Special Operations Command. Warrant Officer Nick Lavery is a warrior's warrior. Nick selflessly and repeatedly risks his life for his nation, his comrades in arms, and most importantly, he accomplishes what our nation needs him to do every time he leaves our shores. Nick is a hero in the truest sense. 2012 was just another dangerous living year for Nick. In September, he took shrapnel to his back during a village clearing operation in Afghanistan. In November, he was shot in the face while rescuing his detachment commander from a burning vehicle in a complex ambush. But each time he refused to be evacuated out of country for his wounds, insisting that he return to his detachment, which he did. This is typical Nick. In 2013, things got a little tougher. On March 11th, he found himself under withering machine gun fire during an insider attack. Nick, being the incredible, selfless, and especially brave Green Beret that he is, rushed out to save an American infantryman caught in the open during the ambush. In doing so, Nick was shot 5 times. His significant wounds ultimately resulted in the amputation of his right leg above the knee. As you could imagine, Nick was in a tough spot and had a long and demanding recovery in front of him. But his grit and raw determination kept him going, and again, he insisted on returning to his detachment, despite being told he'd have a tough time walking down a grocery store aisle. Over time, he regained his superhuman strength And in fact, the general was not kidding on that. He is, in fact, that strong for an average sized human being. He requested a team assignment, leading from the front as usual. Nick demanded that he earn his spot. He prepared for the operational readiness test, an incredibly rigorous series of aerobic and anaerobic physical requirements that replicate the challenges of combat. Nick passed and was the first above the knee amputee to do so. Upon returning to the 3rd Special Forces Group, first as a lead instructor for the Special Forces Combative Program, where legend has it, he greatly increased lethality of Green Berets while frankly terrifying anybody who had to fight him. Nick once again healed, quickly got back to his team, and that incredible determination led him to Afghanistan, becoming again the first Special Forces operator to return to combat as an above-the-knee amputee. After 2 additional combat deployments on a team, Nick's warrior mindset and desire to continue selfless service led him to a commission as a Special Forces warrant officer, where he remains on the line to this day, making a difference. In addition to remaining on active duty, Nick is an author with his autobiographic self-help book, Objective Secure, the battle-tested guide to goal achievement. In the foreword of his book, Lieutenant General Beret wrote, "The power of Nick's story is not found solely in his monumental achievements, which are extraordinary. It's in the simplicity of his process and his genuine desire to help his teammates. Through his experiences and an Army Special Operations trade secret or two, he shows you in Objective Secure how to conquer your impossible." Nick also adds entrepreneur to his resume with his business Team Machine. Through Team Machine, Nick shares his story and expertise through presentations, workshops, and keynote addresses. Team Machine's business vision is leaders of impact. Before we get started with our episode, we will have a word from one of our major sponsors, REI Oklahoma. REI Oklahoma is proud to be part of the General Tommy Franks Leadership Institute and Museum in the production and distribution of these podcasts designed to inspire leaders and difference makers. At REI Oklahoma, we have been working with small business leaders, entrepreneurs, and people who are driven to succeed for years. Highly motivated people working to own their own businesses, live in their own homes, and make the world a better place since its beginning. REI Oklahoma has continued to identify hurdles and deliver holistic solutions to create job growth and help neighborhoods thrive in both rural and urban communities. REI Oklahoma looks forward to visiting with you about helping your business and community grow. Visiting reiok.org or call 1-800-658-2823 to start the conversation.
The LeBar family is a 4th-generation Oklahoma family. That may not sound like a long time, but our grandfathers were born here, within the Comanche Nation, before the land grant. We are the proudest sponsor of the Tommy Franks 4-Star Leadership Podcast. We hope listeners will heed the words of these distinguished men and women who have served our country at the highest levels and across all walks of life.
All right. It's great today to be joined with our guest today, which is Nick Lavery. So, Nick, if you want to, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure, Jill. First off, thanks for having me. This is great. Not only do I appreciate the time today, but I have a greater appreciation for what you guys are doing in your efforts, particularly within our young person demographic. If there was ever a need, you could easily argue that today is that day where perhaps it's most critical. So I just congratulate you guys on your efforts. A little bit about me. So I am an active duty member of the United States Army. I serve as a Green Beret within the Army Special Forces. I've been doing this now 17 years, which is just wild when you say it out loud, how fast it goes by. And it's a profession, it's a lifestyle in which I love. I consider it to be an enormous privilege to be able to do what I do. Beyond that, and more significantly than that, I would say is I'm a husband and a father. My wife is also active duty Army. She's also in special operations, and we are the proud parents of two young boys. Our oldest just turned 7, and our youngest just turned 3. And I mentioned them kind of in my intro because it's kind of like the normal thing to do, I guess. But it's also important because a lot of the conversation we're going to have here, I can say with certainty that those three human beings are not only deeply rooted in why I do a lot of what I do, but more so how I do what I do is really those three personalities. And then lastly, I guess I'll just kind of round out the intro for those that haven't already figured this out. I am originally from Boston, Massachusetts. I do have a bit of an accent. We have to figure out how to work through together here, Jill and I. So if I say something and you're like, I have no idea what this dude just said, no problem. We'll figure it out together.
No, that's great. I was interviewing one of our students, and she said that she spoke like 3 different languages, and she asked if I spoke another language, and I'm like, no, I just speak Hick and I speak Okie. And she just was like, what is Okie? And I'm like, well, if you come to Oklahoma, you will soon figure out what that is. So my first time being around someone with a thick Boston accent like that was one of my husband's best friends in the military. His wife was from Boston.
Uh,
And I finally had to ask her, I'm like, where are you from? And I mean, and she finally, and I'm like, that makes perfect sense. But I mean, she just had a very thick Boston accent. So
Good deal.
I think I'll be able to go along.
I
So
think so.
you said that you're in special forces. So I know that you can't talk a lot about what special forces do on your day-to-day role, but in that world, teamwork plays such a vital part of your life. So can you tell us the importance of teamwork in that environment?
Oh, man. I mean, second, probably only to an individual's character. One's ability to operate in a small team environment is probably the next most significant attribute or aspect of a person that our selection cadre are charged with assessing, and all of the individuals that go into the selection process and then the training that immediately follows. That's one of the most significant things that they're looking for is the ability to operate within a team. And that drastically outweighs a person's individual performance or skill, right? Meaning we would 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 100, rather have a person on the team that runs a 1 minute slower 5 mile run that can operate in a team environment than the faster person. Because it's much easier for us to train individuals to be able to run faster and lift heavier weight and have a tighter shot group with their marksmanship and all these skills that are certainly important. I'm not dismissing the importance of individual capability and skill, because without them, odds are you will be unable to contribute to the team and to the mission. But the ability to operate in a team, to be a solid teammate is essential. And really, I would argue that that's the case regardless of the organization, or really regardless of the scale or size or scope of the organization. But certainly when you get into the world of special operations, where you're talking about very small teams, a special forces ODA is 12 guys. And that's a small contingent that is expected to be dropped off anywhere in the world and operate almost entirely self-sufficient to be able to find, recruit, train, and lead a much larger fighting force into combat. That is literally why Green Berets exist. So if you're incapable of operating in that small team environment, then the amount of skill you have as an individual is almost certainly irrelevant. And you're either going to have to figure out how to work as a teammate and work within a team, or chances are this isn't the lifestyle for you.
We have incredible warriors in the special forces, and each of them, and in the military, everyone goes above and beyond on any given day and that's what sets our amazing military above anybody else in the world. what you did not mention, and I believe you're somewhat humble of, and what sets you apart from some of your other special forces is you are one of the only above the knee amputees that has ever been able to make it back to full return onto a special forces team. And so when I was reading through your book, which is an amazing book, the Objective Secure, it's an amazing book that
Thank you.
anybody that, in the military or out that is, wanting to learn how to meet goals, everyone should read this book. It is truly amazing. But when I was researching and reading for this interview, you had countless people talking about your drive and your fire to get to where you are today. So, where has that come from? Have you always had that?
You know, I love this question, Jill, and I don't want this to sound rehearsed, but it is one that I get quite common. And it's one of my favorites to answer because, in today's social media driven world where a lot of us consume this, polished, the 17th version of the photo with all the filters and all the editing, and it's this like image. It's very easy to make the inaccurate assumption that this person has kind of always lived this way that you're seeing in this one little snapshot. And I've received kind of that same sentiment from times, and I've been asked a similar question or this exact question, like, have you always been this way? The short answer is absolutely not. 100% no. And I can say that with just about every aspect of who I am and what has made me successful and some of these character traits and personality traits that I leverage in my pursuits today. I was very much a very typical kid in a lot of ways. I grew up scared, insecure, struggled socially. I was the new kid in school every year. I was bullied. I was picked on. I did my best to try to chameleon myself to fit in with whatever group I thought might have me. And I had this whole new identity that I would create. 12 months later, I'd come home. My parents would be like, what is this new thing? And it was just this constant evolution of me struggling to try to fit in. And so, no, I was not this kind of action hero warrior that you see and kind of assume me to be now. Um, there were absolutely some kind of foundational character traits that existed within me. I give both my parents most of the credit for instilling those values into me as a young person. For me, it just took becoming a young adult after entering the military for me to be able to really see those seeds begin to prosper and bloom and rise to the surface, and for me to be able to see the value for what they really were and really what they really are. So no, I was not always this driven. I was not always this disciplined. I did not always have this degree of work ethic and commitment and these attributes that I teach and live by today. Many of them existed, but I had to go through a lot of kind of knucklehead choices over the course of my time as a young person, even into a young adult, before I really was able to see them for what they were and begin to kind of leverage them.
The students that we have at our leadership institute, some of them, they're the top leaders in their high schools and in their states, and some of them already hold national leadership positions in different organizations. I mean, they've started small businesses, they've started nonprofits. They've never really dealt with what failure is like.
Mm.
Um, Us ordinary people, that was just part of our growing up. So, to these individuals, when they get to college and they're, a part of a bigger community and maybe that first failure does happen, how would you tell them to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that odds are there have been countless failures within their lives to this point. Whether or not they see them as such may be a different discussion or a different way to view the same discussion. I mean, when every single person you're talking about, at some point, they were trying to figure out how to walk, maybe when they were 18 months old or 2 years old or wherever. And the way that they figured out how to do that was by failing at it hundreds of times. So you can look at that from the time that a person's born all the way up to they're in their early 20s, late 20s, 70s, and there's likely a stack, a long list of of failures along the way. And because the truth is we typically learn most of the time by getting it wrong. That's where most of the wisdom is located. And I was of that same kind of class where I was an athlete in high school. I was an athlete in college. I played football. And I was of this mentality that I will never fail at anything ever. And I think that that's pretty common, particularly amongst aggressive, competitive go getters, whether you're an athlete or not. Like, I will never fail. But there's a big difference between actually never failing and just having the dedication to get back up and keep going. And perhaps you just blow by the fact that that was a huge miss because you're so driven to keep going. So the value exists in getting it wrong. I think that when you begin to reframe your perspective of what failure is, and if you can lean into the discomfort that comes with it, largely it's emotional damage more than physical. It's the embarrassment or the shame or the self-doubt or the ridicule or the whatever that happens by messing something up, i.e. failure. You start to see them for the opportunities that they really are. And it's an indicator that you have a chance to improve. You have a chance to get stronger and more resilient and smarter. And, I ask this question often when I'm working with clients or I'm with a group. It's like, how do you stop somebody who is not only going to get back up every time they get knocked down, but they're going to get smarter and stronger and better every single time? And it's a rhetorical question, Jill, because of course the answer is you cannot. You've created an unstoppable force that cannot be stopped. In fact, every time they take a hit, they come back better. And you just create this cyclical cycle of improvement. So I think that my advice to the young person that's kind of going into that next level of life is, one, anticipate the failures because they're inevitable. It's gonna happen. So know it going in. And then when it does happen, see it for the opportunity that it is. And if you can extract that wisdom and then ram it back into the system and go again and again and again, literally we are only limited by the limitations we create in our own minds.
Exactly. So on that day in March of 2013, how did that change you? And other than just physically?
Well, I mean, how it changed me, actually, you may assume that, well, the obvious answer to that is, well, you used to have 4 limbs and now you only have 3, right? So that's kind of like an obvious one, but that actually pales in comparison to the way it changed me from a mentality perspective. Light years different, like not even close. And that also really is correlated to the challenges that I had to go through. Many dive quickly into the physical realm, which is understandable. It's okay.
Mhm.
I'm a big guy. I'm a strong guy. I'm an athlete. I'm a Green Beret. There's a lot of like physical type questions or thoughts, like how did you learn to run again? How did you learn how to do all these like physical tasks? And yeah, it was really hard to do that, but it was significantly more difficult for me to win those mental battles day in, day out, which I think is why the way it changed me mentally far supersedes the way it changed me physically. I had to get really comfortable, not only comfortable, but I had to learn how to be productive in a place of isolation. And I say that kind of with an asterisk on it because I was surrounded by amazing people constantly. I mean, at Walter Reed, hundreds and hundreds of just amazing humans that were pouring themselves into me to help me get better. Family, friends, colleagues, leaders. I mean, people that I was around people constantly, but I was also on a bit of an island when it came to, I had set my sights on a goal, on a vision that no one around me thought was not only possible, but even somewhat like practical. Like, it was a ridiculous concept that a one-legged guy was going to go back to an ODA and go back into combat. So I had to get really comfortable with that state of mind and avoid that from deteriorating relationships around me. Meaning, like my father, for example, who's my best friend in the world, at some point it was like, hey, listen, buddy, I don't think this is going to happen. I had to see that for where it was coming from through his lens. I was out of love. It was out of fear. And I had to get to a position where I could take in that kind of external criticism or opinion or position and respect it, appreciate it, disagree with it, and that's okay. And then remain committed to my conviction of what I knew I needed to continue to pursue. So I think that that's probably a pretty common tale for most ambitious individuals. You may find yourself on this bit of an island where you believe in something, you're pursuing something, perhaps no one around you thinks that what you're doing is realistic or doable. But do you have the passion and the drive and the clarity of vision strong enough to continue to pursue it anyway?
Right. So, and you talk about, teamwork is important in, our lives and your life in the military and your recovery. But then there's always those naysayers out there that are like, this is not even going to be possible, and you talked about that in your book, when you talked about the medical evaluation board that military members have to go through when they're going to be to see if they're fit for duty to continue or not continue, and to move on in the next, process in their lives. And that kind of hit home for me. I've had to go through that with my husband. We had a lot of the naysayers up against us. And unfortunately, in his fight, they won. I think that that happens a lot. So, how did you use that mentality of, keeping those people around you that are there to help you and motivate you, like your family, your father, and those supportive doctors? But how did you keep those naysayers out of your way to get to where you are?
Yeah, I think I could answer this question with one word, and the word's faith. And that's got a very strong biblical and spiritual tone to it, understandably so. For me, it does have that same connection with me personally. But a definition of faith is a firm belief in something for which there is no proof.
Mm.
And to what degree do you have that faith? How strong is it? You know, for me, it was non-negotiable. It was ironclad. It was full conviction. It didn't matter what others around me thought, what their opinions were of the same thing. It was that's great. No, I have no problem with that. Believe what you believe. I believe what I believe. We can believe it or not. I know in today's world that sounds crazy, but we can disagree on something and still be friends and still be close and still have a strong relationship. I know it's like this amazing concept where having a difference of opinion is like something to avoid, where in fact it's quite powerful in many, many ways. So when I was going through the med board, it was just another administrative battle that had the same exact thing going on. It was people around me, administrators and my pueblo and all these people that were like, "Hey, dude, like this isn't really a thing." And I'm like, "Well, it's we're gonna find out." And if you are unwilling to support that, then I have hold nothing against you personally. This isn't personal. This is business, and I have a job to do, and I am going to exhaust literally all means that I can think of, and then I will find the ones I haven't thought of yet to make that real, to do my job. So it enabled me when I was in the hospital and I'm going through surgeries and I'm learning how to live life as a one-legged guy and operate a prosthetic and all those things. And then I get back to Fort Bragg. I find myself on a med board that I wasn't totally anticipating it being the administrative street fight that it turned into. And it was like, all right, cool. Like this is just a different fight. But I have the same mentality. So it really didn't change my perspective. It just how I fought that fight was different.
And you battled through, and you've gotten to be where you are today, and you kind of have this celebrity mentality, celebrity, persona surrounding you. So with that, I'm sure that you are approached by everyone that just wants to be in the cool circle with, Nick Lavery, the cool person. So, how do you make sure that you're still surrounded by those right people, the people that have, your best interest at heart?
Yeah, that's a funny question. I laugh because 5 years ago, even probably less than that, if if you would have asked me if I would be on this podcast with you, had written a book, started my own company, be active on social media, I would have said you are out of your mind. There's no shot of that happening. And of course, things change and you make choices and things play out the way they do. It's just the game of life. The word celebrity is one that I do find interesting. I I do not consider myself such. In fact, I laugh jokingly and lovingly when that's kind of thrown in my direction. Recently, I was at the airport, flight was delayed, whatever, and I stop, I grab some food, and I'm sitting at the bar, this restaurant in whatever airport I was in, and one person comes up to me and, hey, are you Nick Lavery? Yes. Oh, I'm a fan. Can I take a picture with you? Yeah, sure, no problem. That happens like 3 or 4 times, and at some point, the bartender, this really young girl, comes over and she's like, "Who are you?" And which is just such an odd question to get from anybody. Like, there's no great way to answer that. Like, do you want my name? Do you want my job? Like, I don't know. I'm a human. And she's like, no, like, who are you? And I'm like, yeah, my name's Nick, and I'm a soldier and whatever. And a response I give her, and she pulls up social media and she's like, this is you. And she's like losing her mind, and the kitchen staff are coming out. And it's this like whole thing. And I'm just kind of sitting there laughing about it. And she's like, you're like famous. And I'm like, I don't think I would say that. And she's like, no, well, what would you say? And I said, well, I think due to the internet and social media, particularly, the world's gotten really small, and I stick out a little bit. And I think it was her manager was like, that was probably the greatest answer I've ever heard someone give to that kind of like line of questioning. I was like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's the case. I think to your question, Jill, it's I've learned over the years that the size of your circle really is irrelevant. What's more important, at least at a minimum, we could probably agree on, is the strength of your circle is
Yeah.
really what matters. And a circle doesn't have to be big to be strong. In fact, a bigger circle can have a lot of little gaps in there, a lot of little weaknesses. There could be some points of penetration that you'd rather avoid. So having a tight knit crew, a small, reliable circle of those that are better than you, those that you respect, those that you learn from, and those that you can pass on knowledge and wisdom to, I think is the trifecta of that circle that you want to create, right? A combination of mentors, allies, and proteges. And oftentimes, if we choose to take a really hard, candid self inventory of who we have in our circle right now, to your listeners that are listening to this right now, I challenge you to do that. Take a hard look at who's in that circle, right? Look at the last 10 people that you've texted that you didn't necessarily have to, right? Outside of work or whatever. Like, who is that? And are they pouring fuel on your fire, or are they draining energy from you? Because there's the cliche expression, you're the average of the 5 you spend the most time with. And that's kind of a somewhat anecdotal statistic, but I think that the spirit of that makes a lot of sense. And because the people around us have an enormous influence on us, either consciously or subconsciously. So I think the more we can protect that and the more deliberate we can get about who we allow in that circle is going to set us up for a greater success.
Hello, this is Dr. Jill Green with the General Tommy Franks Leadership Institute and Museum. I would like to tell you about one of our partner sponsors, Justin Krieger. He has worked as an independent insurance agent at Krieger Insurance Agency in his hometown of Hobart, Oklahoma since 1999. Justin is honored to help with our annual Celebration of Freedom event and has served on the board of directors for the General Tommy Franks Leadership Institute and Museum for many years. He is a fifth-generation farmer and rancher in Kiowa County, where cattle, crops, and even insurance is sold with a handshake. Give him a call at 580-726-3076 or stop by the office and speak with Justin, Denise Reeves, or Wendy Block about your insurance needs. Krieger Insurance is thankful for their loyal customers and friends who have supported them through the years and look forward to earning your business as well. Justin feels honored to live in such a great country, and he is proud to be a sponsor of the Core Principles of Leadership podcast. Please enjoy the rest of this podcast experience brought to you by your friends at Krieger Insurance Agency. So, and you talk about mentors, and so through your journey, it's everyone's journey. It's important to have mentors, and at our leadership program, we always talk about how important it is. But at the same time, people, no matter your age, there's always somebody that is looking up to you. So we always talk about how important it is that your actions and values, they're not just words, but they're they're how you live your life. So, what is one piece of advice that a mentor has given to you along the way that has really stuck with you?
Oh man, I would say that it has to be more than solely about the outcome. The way in which you reach that outcome also matters. In fact, you could pose the argument that it may matter equally, if not more, than the outcome itself. And really, this is a discussion that really gets at one word, and that word is integrity. And this is
Mhm.
a very important word for anybody, particularly young people, where it's doing the right thing regardless of who's watching, kind of that cliche basic definition of integrity. What's important to note is if you choose to prioritize that and put that at the forefront of your mind while you're making decisions in pursuit of a goal, it is going to make achievement more difficult, period. It's going to make it harder if you do it the right way. And you have to be willing to choose the hard right over the easy wrong. And that's easy to nod your head at and be like, yeah, got it. Makes total sense. When it comes time to actually do it, it's going to be incredibly difficult. Certainly, if you've got people around you that you respect and care for, and you're in that team dynamic that are all going one way in order to create the outcome, and you know in your heart of hearts that it's the wrong way to do that. And are you willing to stand up for that, to do things the right way? So, and I think that this, to look at the larger picture, or at least a larger picture, I think it's a huge part of what makes the United States as great of a place as it actually is. As a military service member, I do not have a single adversary that plays by the same set of rules as us. There's not one. Whether it's a terrorist organization or a major state actor or anything in between, we play by an entirely separate set of rules. And as a young warfighter who's being dropped off in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by people who are trying to kill me every day, and being told to solve really difficult problems, and then be told I can't do that these ways, that is really difficult to adhere to. That's incredibly frustrating. You spend enough time in the industry, you spend enough time in this operational life, you gain some experience, you see it go wrong enough times by cutting corners and kind of taking the fast and loose approach, and then you slowly start to learn as to why this matters. So how do you go about doing that? If you are going to go into a street fight with one arm tied behind your back, how do you do that? And the answer to that question is you just simply have to decide that me as an individual and my team are simply going to be that good that we are still going to come in and kick your ass anyway. That has to be the mentality, because you are going to take the more difficult route to reach that same goal. Easier said than done. What I challenge young people to do is stop putting this one word at the forefront of your mind. Forget the back of your mind. How often do we hear that? Keep this in the back of your mind. It's like, well, how much stuff can I keep in the back of my mind? It's pretty full right now. I'm talking about putting it in the front of your mind. And to your point, Jill, if you do that, which requires deliberate, purposeful intent, meaning I'm going into this decision, I'm going into this thing with integrity on the forefront of my mind. If you do that enough, with enough conditioning, it just becomes the way you operate. And then you no longer really have to pay at least as much attention to doing it this way, because you've conditioned your mind to just being, this is the way you do business. And now you no longer have to be concerned about putting on this front or creating this facade or creating this message of one thing, because it's just the way you are. It is the way you operate. That does not just happen by accident. You have to do it on purpose. So that's what I would challenge young people is live integrity on purpose.
Purpose. Perfect. So, the warrior ethos, I mean, it's something that everyone associated with the military knows. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade behind. So, and that isn't just something that our military members live by when they're deployed or when they're in uniform. It's something that is, it's instilled in them to live, their life by. So, to our young leaders about to go out into the real world, some of them won't choose the military path, some may. So, why is that so important? Why is that a way of life? Is it so important to live that, whether you're in uniform or not?
Well, I think that framework is one that creates a mindset that sets anybody up for victory, regardless of what it is they're trying to do. And those are very, militant slogans and mission and comrade. And of course, that's done on purpose because it's part of the soldier's creed. Like the warrior ethos, what you just read, is the second paragraph within the soldier's creed, which was the first thing I ever learned when I showed up to Fort Benning, Georgia to go to basic training 17 some odd years ago. What I have found interesting is I use that framework, not just in my book, but within the curriculums I teach and the workshops that me and my team put on. And what's a lot of fun has been translating those very militant, gritty, like aggressive statements and translating those into words, phrases, ideas that anyone can understand and show quite simply how applicable they are to anyone, regardless of their walk of life or their hobby or their goal or their profession or whatever they're trying to do. So, what I also find interesting about it is what all four of those have in common is the use of absolute terms, meaning always or never. These like nth degree terms. And it's written that way for a reason because it creates a strong impact. Right? Like I will always place the mission first is much stronger than I'll usually place the mission first. It doesn't have the same effect when you substitute an absolute for something that is likely a little more accurate. The reason why I bring this up is I use those tenets and principles as a way of living my life, and the way I run my business and my family life and with our clients and friends. The use of the absolutes is oftentimes leveraged as a reason why these don't apply to you, or it gives people a way to off ramp or a soft spot to land. Meaning, if I will always place the mission first, translates into the importance of discipline as it does in my curriculum. Does that mean that you are expected to be perfect, that you are expected to bat 1,000? That if the mission is to get in good shape, right? I want to be stronger physically, or I want to lose body fat, or choose your specific physical goal. Does that mean that I will never, ever have a slice of pizza ever again? Well, no, of course not. Like no one's batting 1,000. So don't let that extreme language of those uses of those terms give you an excuse to not follow this framework. All right. It's the spirit of those ethos. It's the spirit of those tenets that is meant to be taken into your lives and then put at the forefront as we're making all these decisions countless times every single day.
One of my favorite things in your book that you talked about is said that not everything in your life can be a priority. So, with that, how do you create priorities while not neglecting the other parts of your life that are still very important?
Yeah, this is a great discussion as well. And there are several ways in which you can leverage the word priority. The way I do is the way that we have priorities of work, particularly in like patrol-based operations. Okay, so if we are doing small unit tactics and we're going to set up a patrol base, there is a very deliberate sequence of events that you will follow every single time you do that. And those sequence of events are created to prioritize one thing versus the next versus the next. Priorities in general can be looked at the same way. There's going to be number one, and then there's going to be number 8,000,012 or whatever's left. Priorities is a list, okay? If everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. Something matters more now than everything else. The way I leverage priorities is through that same vantage point of priorities or work with patrol-based operations, meaning I have my priorities in life, okay? And those are essentially ironclad. They're really not moving around. They could, but they're ironclad. Like my family is number one. My profession as a Green Beret is number two. My life as an entrepreneur is number three. And then really what I call an implied task is my health and wellness, right? Because I have to be in a good operating position for me to be an asset to anybody else within those other three sectors of my life. That's my mindset. That's my physical ability, my personal health, my intelligence. Those things are constantly a priority as I'm addressing my priorities, right? So the way I use it is I've got my priorities. Boom, 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 boom. Got it. Those don't move for me. What changes is what I'm focusing on at any given moment. So my focus has to change sometimes minute to minute, sometimes second to second or hour to hour. What is the focus right now? And there's this common massive misconception with the notion of multitasking, right? Like the idea that multitasking is the one's ability to do multiple things at the same time. And that's actually not what multitasking is. Okay. The human brain can only focus on one thing at one time. That's it. All right. That's the way our brain functions. What multitasking is one's ability to lift and shift fire from one thing to another. How fast and efficient can one do that? That is multitasking. All right. Now, that's a skill, right? We learned it in marksmanship. If we're shooting multiple targets, there's a lot of things that our brain has to take in, but I can only focus on one thing at one time. Front sight post, boom. I zoom back out, target, front sight post, boom. And it's just the process of lifting and shifting fire on one thing to the next. So our focus is what we can leverage and we can learn to be better at it. And those of us with ambition can struggle this immensely. I do still regularly, meaning this has been blocked off for family time. The most important thing in my entire life is my wife and my 2 kids. And I've got this deliberate blocked off 90 minutes for us to spend time together. And this just happened the other day. This is a true story, Jill. I'm home. I'm with my three-year-old. Okay, he's 3. We're on the floor in his bedroom playing Legos. All right, building stuff. My phone is on the floor next to me. At some point, I reach over and grab it. I'm waiting for an important email to come in. I'm doing a quick scroll. He looks at me and goes, "Dad, put your phone down." And in that moment, I just felt like the greatest failure as a father in my life. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at this. It really humbled me quick. He really taught me an important lesson as I need to be reminded of. So the reason why I bring this up is when you're in those moments, focusing on that does not mean you don't care about the other million things in your life. It just means you're trying to increase efficiency and you're trying to increase quality. So when you're in that moment, be in that moment. How do I get better overall? Calendar management, time prioritization, discipline. There's a lot of other ways to go about doing that, but focus on what you're doing now so you can do it to the best of your possible ability. And then when it's time to lift and shift fire and move on to the next thing, then you do that.
I kind of have a personal story like that. After my husband was retired, I started, focusing more on my career and that sort of thing. And I put my job first. And my son, he was probably a sophomore or junior in high school, and he'd had some sort of a program at school. And I went to the program, and one of his teachers goes, "Oh, I didn't know there was a mom."
Oof. Yeah.
And
that hurts.
And it was, we laugh about it and we're like, but deep down, I can still remember that woman's, her saying that to me. And so, yeah, it's, you have to understand at what time, it's important, no matter what your top priorities are. So, and they have a way of making sure that they know that the priority is what it's supposed to be. So, yeah, that was my come to light moment. And I usually ask our podcast guest the same question, the same last question every time. It's just good to hear what each person is going to say. So, if you could give 18-year-old Nick a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh man. Yeah, there'd be quite a bit. There would be quite a bit. We already touched on one, the importance of integrity, and that would probably be in the discussion of the one thing I would say to myself. Like I said, I made a lot of poor choices, and I got really lucky in a lot of ways to be where I am. Things could have gone, just a whole nother direction. But we already talked about that, so I'll choose something different. And the second thing that comes to mind is the skill that is patience. Another skill, which is learned, just like any other skill. Like I want to get good at shooting free throws. You got to shoot a whole lot of free throws. Patience is a skill, and it's one that took me quite a bit of time to learn. What I like to highlight about patience, and this is actually in my book as well, is that there's a difference between patience and procrastination, and oftentimes those get kind of convoluted into the same thing. Meaning, if you are just putting off doing the thing because it's going to take a long time for that thing to grow into something worthwhile, that is not being patient. That is procrastination. You are putting something off and repeatedly putting it off and just kicking the can down the road. That's not being patient. That's procrastination. Patience is knowing something's going to take a while, and during that, get after it daily towards that. That's patience. It's the ability to continue to execute and do something without seeing the immediate fruits of that labor, but believing in the process and still committing to it without having the immediate feedback of the result, right? So like you go to the gym and you work out for an hour. It's a great workout. Let's say it's perfect, if that was such a thing. Maybe you got a little bit of a pump effect, blood's flowing, you're sweating. There's like some visual cues, but you go home, you take a shower, you go to bed, you wake up in the morning, you look yourself in the mirror, and you probably don't look all that much different than you did the day before, even though you went to the gym and you crushed yourself for an hour. This is the same concept. It's going to take a while, but you have to be putting in the effort now. So that's something that for me, as a young person, I was completely impatient, with a lot of other attributes of my young life, that eventually I learned is you can't build, Rome wasn't built in a day, and kind of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, these like cliche expressions that we have that kind of all message the same concept. There is no way to speed up the clock. All right. And good things usually take time. Good things usually take a long time, and hammering down on your craft and being able to stay focused on something for that duration, having the endurance to stay focused on something for that long and continue to go after it daily. That right there separates the average from the greats, because most are going to want the immediate satisfaction, not get that relatively quickly, and say, you know what, the hell with this, I'm on to the next thing. And it's those that are willing to continue to hammer down and stay convicted to that vision and that mission, despite not seeing that immediate feedback, but keep going anyway, believing in it, having a high degree of faith and drive and determination, and a relentless need and obsession to see it through and confirm with every ounce of truth that this is real or not. I am going to find out. That's what creates the household names that we know of today, the Edisons, the Jordans, right? Like these people lived that. And if I could impart one thing onto myself as a young person, it would be patient, but get to work right now.
Well, that is great advice, especially in a world of instant gratification. I think that is advice that we all could all learn a little something from. So I appreciate your time today, Nick. It was a great interview, and we hope that we can have you out to Oklahoma sometime, and you can speak with us in person. So
love to.
All right. So
thanks, Jill.
Thank you again to REI Oklahoma for making this podcast possible. For nearly 40 years, the board, staff, patrons, and supporters of the nonprofit economic development REI Oklahoma have been committed to expanding Oklahoma's economic prosperity, earning the reputation of being one of the most comprehensive economic development organizations in the country. Business lines, training workshops, business consulting, and networking opportunities, as well as technical assistance and even commercial business space, are made available to Oklahoma entrepreneurs and small businesses. For low and moderate income individuals and families, down payment and or closing cost assistance is offered. Learn more at reiok.org. On behalf of the 4-Star Leadership with General Tommy Franks team, I'm your host, Dr. Jill Green, and this has been the Core Principles of Leadership with General Tommy Franks podcast. Now it's your turn, podcast listeners. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what you think of this episode and all our other episodes. Share this podcast with all the leaders and up-and-coming leaders in your circles. Be sure to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast listening platform, and don't forget to mark your calendars the last Friday of each month for another inspiring episode. So for now, as General Franks always says, go be feisty.